It happened in broad daylight, in the most sacred precinct on earth, before thousands of witnesses, with deliberate, calculated fury. A single man walked into the beating heart of the ancient world's most powerful religious institution and destroyed it. Not metaphorically, not in a parable, physically, violently, irreversibly. He overturned the tables of the money changers. He scattered the coins across the temple stones. He drove out the merchants, the dove sellers, the livestock traders. He seized a cord, fashioned it into a whip, and unleashed it upon the most economically vital space in the entire Roman East. And here is what history has buried beneath 2,000 years of Sunday sermons. This was not an act of spontaneous outrage. This was a precision strike, a calculated assault on a system that had transformed the house of God into what one ancient source called a den of robbers. Not merely a marketplace of greed, but a criminal enterprise protected by the highest priestly authority in Jerusalem. The open question, the one that changes everything, is this: why did this single act, more than any miracle, more than any sermon, seal his death warrant? What was Jesus actually threatening when he walked into that courtyard? Whose money was he scattering? Whose power was he dismantling? By the end of this investigation, you will know precisely why the temple cleansing was not a moment of holy frustration. It was the opening move in a confrontation that the priestly aristocracy could not survive and would not forgive. Welcome to Bible Secrets, Hidden History. Before we descend into these ancient archives, consider joining our community of seekers by subscribing. If you believe this history deserves to be preserved, a simple like helps this truth reach those who are searching for it. Chapter 1: The House on the Mountain. To understand what Jesus shattered, you must first understand what the temple was. Not merely a building, not merely a place of worship. The Temple Mount in the 1st century was the single most powerful financial and political institution in the ancient Near East. Herod the Great had spent 46 years reconstructing it, a fact the Gospel of John records with precise historical accuracy. By the time Jesus walked its stones, the temple complex covered 37 acres. Its outer courts were larger than 20 football fields. Its walls rose to heights that left Roman engineers breathless. Flavius Josephus, the 1st century Jewish historian whose writings remain our most detailed window into this world, described the temple's white limestone as blinding in morning sunlight. So radiant, he wrote, that travelers approaching Jerusalem mistook it for a snow-capped mountain. The Greek word Josephus uses to describe the temple treasury is gazophalakion, derived from the Old Persian ganza, meaning royal treasury. This was not religious vocabulary. It was the language of empire. The temple did not merely receive offerings. It functioned as the central bank of Judea. Here is the economic reality that most sermons omit entirely. The temple collected the half-shekel temple tax from every Jewish male above the age of 20, not only in Judea, but across the entire diaspora. Egypt, Babylon, Rome, Asia Minor. Every Jewish community on earth sent its annual tribute to Jerusalem. Josephus estimates that at peak periods, the temple treasury held the equivalent of decades of Roman provincial taxation. Contemporary scholars estimate the annual inflow in modern equivalents at hundreds of millions of dollars. That money had to be changed. Roman coins bore the image of Caesar. Some carried the inscription Divi Filius, Son of the Divine. To pay the temple tax with such coins was considered a desecration. The tax had to be paid in the Tyrian shekel, a coin minted in the Phoenician city of Tyre, valued for its silver purity and standardized weight. And this is where the money changers enter the story. Chapter 2. The men behind the tables. The Greek word for money changer is kolibistes. It derives from kolibon, the small coin, the exchange premium, the surcharge. These men did not change money as a public service. They extracted a fee, a compulsory fee, a fee that no Jewish male could avoid. The surcharge on each exchange was, by rabbinic sources including the Mishnah Tractate Shekalim, approximately 1 mea, roughly 4% of the coin's value. For a single worshiper, this was manageable. Across hundreds of thousands of pilgrims flooding Jerusalem for Passover, the aggregate sum was staggering. The Mishnah, the written compilation of Jewish oral law redacted around 200 CEI, preserves precise regulations governing temple commerce. Mishnah Shekalim describes exactly when the money changers' tables were set up in the outer courts, what exchange rates were permissible, and how disputes were arbitrated. This is not legend. This is documented economic regulation. But who controlled these concessions? The answer has been known to scholars for generations and has almost never reached a congregation. The money-changing concessions inside the temple courts were controlled by the high priestly families, primarily the House of Annas, the clan that dominated the Sadducean aristocracy for the better part of half a century. Annas himself served as high priest from 6 to 15 CE. His son-in-law Caiaphas held the position from 18 to 36 CEI, encompassing the entire ministry of Jesus. 5 of Annas's sons would eventually hold the high priesthood. The Talmud preserves a devastating fragment of popular resentment against this dynasty. In Pesahim 57a, an ancient lament reads, "Woe to the house of Annas! Woe to their serpent's hiss! They are high priests. Their sons are treasurers. Their sons-in-law are temple officers, and their servants beat the people with sticks." This was the institution Jesus entered. Chapter 3. The Outer Court. The commerce did not happen deep within the sanctuary. It happened in the court of the Gentiles, the outermost ring of the temple complex, the only space where non-Jews were permitted to enter and, theoretically, to pray. The prophet Isaiah had named this court explicitly. In Isaiah 56:7, God declares, "My house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations." This was the verse Jesus quoted as he drove out the merchants. The court of the Gentiles had been progressively colonized by market activity, particularly during the 3 great pilgrimage festivals, Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot. During Passover alone, Josephus estimates that between 2 and 3 million pilgrims descended on Jerusalem. The demand for sacrificial animals, unblemished doves, lambs, oxen, and for currency exchange was overwhelming. The Gospel of John, widely regarded by textual scholars as the most theologically sophisticated of the 4 Gospels, places the temple cleansing at the beginning of Jesus' ministry rather than the end, as the synoptics recorded. Most scholars reconcile this as a deliberate theological statement. John's Gospel positions the temple confrontation as the defining declaration of Jesus' mission from the first moment. But a minority of historical scholars, including E.P. Sanders of Duke University, have argued for the possibility of 2 separate incidents. The debate itself reveals how profoundly central this moment was to every gospel tradition's understanding of Jesus. The livestock pens, the cages of doves, the tables heaped with Tyrian shekels, the cries of merchants, and the smell of animals. all of this filling the space that Isaiah had consecrated to the prayer of nations. Jesus saw not merely corruption, he saw theological catastrophe. The Gentile space, the one court where the nations of the earth could approach the God of Israel, had been converted into a commercial floor serving the financial interests of the high priestly aristocracy. Chapter 4. The Whip and its Consequences. The Gospel of John specifies a detail the other Gospels omit. Jesus did not simply walk in and react. He made a whip, from cords, deliberately. He fashioned the instrument before he used it. This is not the portrait of a man overcome by sudden emotion. This is the portrait of a man who arrived with a purpose and constructed the means to fulfill it. The Greek word John uses for Jesus' act of driving out the animals is ekbalo, the same verb used in the Gospels for the casting out of demons. John is making a deliberate theological statement. Jesus was performing an exorcism on the temple itself. The prophet Zechariah, in the final chapter of his text, had written a prophecy that every literate Jew in Jerusalem would have known by memory. Zechariah 14:21 states, "And there shall no longer be a traitor in the house of the Lord of hosts on that day." The Hebrew word translated as traitor is Kenaani, which also means Canaanite. Jesus, in his temple action, was invoking this exact Zechariah prophecy. He was not merely protesting commerce. He was announcing that the day of the Lord had arrived. He was claiming prophetic authority over the temple itself. This is why the chief priests immediately demanded to know, "By what authority are you doing these things?" They were not asking about crowd management. They were asking whether he was claiming the prophetic mantle that Zechariah had assigned to the coming messianic age. His answer, that he would destroy this temple and raise it in 3 days, was interpreted as a threat against the physical structure. It would be repeated at his trial as evidence of sedition. But the damage was already done. The money changers' tables had been overturned. The animals had fled. The commerce had been interrupted, and more devastatingly, it had happened publicly. Before thousands of Passover pilgrims, with prophetic language that every witness would carry back to their village, their synagogue, their city across the empire. The revenue stream had been disrupted. The authority of the high priestly house had been publicly challenged and humiliated, and the crowd, the gospel accounts are explicit, had cheered. Caiaphas and the council convened immediately. The Gospel of John records their exact calculus. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation. Note carefully what they feared losing first. Not the nation, the place, the temple, the institution, the economic and political power that the temple represented. From that council meeting, the decision was made. Conclusion: the open loop closed. We began with a question. Why did this single act seal his death warrant? Now you know. The temple cleansing was not a protest against bad manners in a holy place. It was a direct assault on the economic infrastructure of the most powerful priestly dynasty in Judea. It invoked a specific messianic prophecy from Zechariah. It claimed divine authority over the sacred space that Caiaphas's family controlled as a personal dominion. And it did all of this before an audience of millions of Passover pilgrims who spread the story across the ancient world within days. Jesus did not die because of theology alone. He died because he threatened money. He died because he threatened power. He died because he walked into the financial engine of the Second Temple and stopped it. And everyone who depended on that engine understood precisely what he was doing. The Roman historian Tacitus, writing in the early 2nd century, noted that Jesus was executed under Pontius Pilate during the reign of Tiberius. What Tacitus could not have known, what 2,000 years of accumulated scholarship has only gradually revealed, is that the death sentence was shaped as much in the chambers of the high priestly aristocracy as in the praetorium of Rome. The tables that fell in the court of the Gentiles were not simply overturned, they were the first domino in a sequence that led directly to Golgotha. And the paradox, the one that reverberates across every century since, is this. The act meant to silence him became the act most discussed, most debated, most remembered of his entire ministry. The coins scattered across the temple floor have never stopped ringing. If this investigation has opened a door you did not know existed, walk through it. Subscribe to Bible Secrets, Hidden History, and join us as we continue to unearth what was never meant to be found. The next hidden truth is waiting.